The Velthari delegation stood in perfect formation as Ambassador Casimir Voss stepped from the transport shuttle, his diplomatic sash gleaming against the harsh light of three suns. The crystalline spires of Nexus Station stretched into the amber sky, a testament to the engineering prowess of the Galactic Council's most prestigious neutral ground. Here, wars were ended with words, not weapons. Voss had negotiated 17 successful peace treaties in his career. The scars on his hands told stories of close calls, desperate gambits, and the weight of entire civilizations resting on his shoulders. Today would be different. Today, he carried humanity's final offer to end the Periphery War conflict that had consumed 6 star systems and left billions displaced. Ambassador chittered Prextel, the Velthari chief negotiator, his forearms gesturing in what humans had learned was a sign of cautious respect. The Coalition awaits your proposal. The Coalition, 7 species united in their belief that humanity's expansion had gone too far. The Velthari with their crystal-cutting mandibles, the hulking Corvin who breathed methane and crushed starships with their bare hands, the ethereal whisper folk who could phase through matter itself. Each had their reasons for wanting humanity contained, pushed back into the Sol system where they belonged. Voss walked through the corridors of Nexus Station, past the memorials to successful negotiations, past the gardens where former enemies now shared water and light. His security detail, a single aide named Lyra Castellanos, followed at a respectful distance. The Council's laws were absolute. No weapons, no military vessels, no acts of aggression within the station's sphere of influence, sir, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible over a hum of alien conversation. Something feels wrong. The usual diplomatic staff isn't here. Where are the observers? The mediators? Voss had noticed too. The station felt hollow, like a stage set for a play with half the actors missing. But he pressed forward. Humanity needed this peace. The colonial defense fleet was stretched thin across a dozen fronts, their resources dwindling with each passing month. This negotiation wasn't just about ending the war, it was about survival. The conference chamber was a marvel of neutral design, its walls shifting between colors that no single species found offensive. Representatives from all 7 coalition species sat in carefully balanced positions. Around the central table, Voss took his seat, placing a quantum-encrypted data pad containing humanity's final terms before him. Honored delegates, he began, his voice carrying the weight of practiced diplomacy. Humanity comes before you not as conquerors, but as neighbors seeking understanding. We offer a complete withdrawal from the contested systems, establishment of neutral buffer zones, and shared technology exchanges that will benefit all our peoples. The silence stretched along. Prextel's mandibles clicked in what Voss had learned was amusement, not consideration. Tell me, Ambassador, came a voice from the shadows, a whisper folk whose name was unpronounceable in human tongues. Do you truly believe we brought you here to negotiate? The chamber's walls suddenly shifted to deep red, and Voss felt the temperature drop. Around the table, the coalition representatives were standing, their postures no longer diplomatic but predatory. The Corvin delegates' breathing apparatus hissed with anticipation. The time for negotiation ended when your species poisoned the Centauri worlds, Prextel said, his forearms now spread wide. When you turn living planets into industrial graveyards, when you prove that humans cannot be trusted with the gift of the stars. Voss's hand moved slowly toward his emergency beacon, but Lyra's sharp intake of breath stopped him. 3 Velthari had materialized behind her, their crystalline claws pressed against her throat. You will send no messages, Prextel continued. Your death here will be the signal for the final assault on Earth itself. The coalition fleets are already in position, waiting for confirmation that humanity's greatest diplomat has been permanently retired. The trap was perfect. Voss realized with crystal clarity that he and Lyra were never meant to leave this room alive. The coalition had lured them here not for peace, but for execution and the excuse to finish what they'd started. But as Casimir Voss looked into the alien faces surrounding him, he smiled. They had made one critical mistake. They had assumed humans always followed the rules. The first shock came from Lyra's concealed neural disruptor, a weapon so small it registered as a medical implant on the station scanners. The Velthari holding her convulsed as electromagnetic pulses fried their nervous systems, their crystalline claws shattering on the floor. Voss moved with the fluid precision of a man who had survived 17 diplomatic missions in hostile territory. His dress coat split along hidden seams, revealing trauma plates and emergency equipment. The Coalition had forgotten that humanity's greatest ambassador was also a veteran of the Titan campaign. Impossible, Prextel shrieked, his mandibles spreading wide. The station's security systems detect weapons, Voss finished, drawing a monomolecular wire from his sleeve. Not everything humans make is considered a weapon by your standards. The Corvin delegate lunged forward, his massive bulk shaking the chamber floor. Voss rolled aside, the wires singing through the air to wrap around the alien's breathing apparatus. Methane hissed from ruptured tubes as the giant crashed into the conference table. Gasping for oxygen, his lungs couldn't process, but the odds were still 7-2, and the Coalition had come prepared for treachery. The Whisperfolk delegate phased through the wall, reappearing behind Lyra with energy claws extended. She spun, her disruptor whining as it discharged, but the beams passed harmlessly through the creature's shifting form. Ethereal fingers closed around her throat, and she felt her strength draining away as the alien fed on her life force. Lyra! Voss's shout echoed through the chamber as he fought off to more Velthari, his monomolecular wire leaving glowing scars in the crystalline hide. But he was surrounded, and more Coalition forces were pouring into the room. The Skex delegate, a creature that looked like a walking oil slick with too many teeth spread across the floor. In a hungry wave, where it touched, metal corroded and flesh dissolved. Voss leaped onto the conference table, his feet barely staying ahead of the acidic creature's advance. You cannot win, human, Prextel called, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction. Your pathetic resistance only proves our point. Humanity must be contained. That's when the first explosion rocked Nexus Station. The lights flickered, and a deep vibration ran through the crystalline structure. The Coalition delegates exchanged confused looks. Their fleets weren't supposed to attack until after the diplomatic execution was confirmed. What? Prextel began, but his words were cut off by a sound no one in the chamber had heard before. The sound of a human war horn, broadcast across all frequencies, echoing through the station's corridors. Voss grinned, blood running from a cut on his cheek. Did you really think we'd send our best diplomat into enemy territory without insurance? The chamber's main screen flickered to life, showing the space around Nexus Station. What had been empty void moments before now swarmed with human vessels. Not the sleek diplomatic ships the Coalition expected, but the angular, brutal warships of the Colonial Defense Fleet's Ghost Division, humanity's Shadow Fleet. The ships that officially didn't exist. At their head flew the CDF Retribution, a dreadnought whose scarred hull told stories of a dozen victories. Its weapons were already charging, blue energy dancing along its forward arrays. The Retribution, Lyra gasped, still fighting against the Whisperfolk's draining touch. But it was destroyed at Kepler Station, reported destroyed, Voss corrected, his wires singing as he carved through another Velthari. Admiral Kowalski has been very creative with her casualty reports. The station shuddered again as the human fleet opened fire not on the Coalition ships, but on Nexus Station's defense grid. The ancient weapons platforms, designed to keep the peace, exploded in brilliant flashes of light. This is Admiral Helena Kowalski of the Colonial Defense Fleet. A voice echoed through the station's communication system. You have 30 seconds to release our ambassador, or we turn this diplomatic monument into a debris field. Prextel's mandibles clicked frantically. They wouldn't dare. This is neutral territory. The Council isn't here, Voss said, his voice deadly. Quiet. You just declared war on humanity by trying to murder a diplomat under a flag of truce. The Corvin delegate had finally stopped twitching, his massive form blocking the chamber's main entrance. The Skex was reforming, preparing for another attack. 3 Velthari circled Voss like crystalline predators, their claws gleaming. But for the first time since entering the chamber, Ambassador Casimir Voss felt hope. The sky had opened with fire, and humanity's children were coming home. 20 seconds. Admiral Kowalski's voice counted down. Your choice, aliens. Release them, or burn. The Coalition delegates looked at each other with dawning horror. They had planned the perfect trap, but they hadn't counted on humanity's oldest rule: never leave a human behind. The Coalition's response came not in words, but in action. Warning. Klaxon screamed through Nexus Station as hidden weapon emplacements rose from the crystalline spires. The neutral station revealed its true nature, a fortress designed to lure humanity's leadership into a killing ground. Energy lances stabbed out from the station's surface, hammering against the shields of the CDF Retribution. The dreadnought's hull glowed cherry red under the assault, but Admiral Kowalski's voice remained steady on the comm. Well, that answers the question. All ships, weapons free, show them why humans don't negotiate with executioners. In the conference chamber, the revelation of the station's true nature sent the coalition delegates into a frenzy. The Velthari abandoned their cautious circle tactics, rushing Voss in a coordinated assault. Their crystalline claws rang against his trauma plates, sending sparks flying. The station's true defenses are online, Prexel called out, his voice filled with savage glee. Your precious fleet will be nothing but scrap metal within the hour. Voss rolled under a swipe from the nearest Velthari, his monomolecular wire wrapping around the creature's leg. The alien shriek filled the chamber as the wire bit deep, but two more took its place. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, his diplomatic finery shredded. Across the chamber, Lyra fought for her life against the Whisper folk, her neural disruptor's power cell running dangerously low. Each shot that passed through the phasing alien was another step closer to helplessness. The creature's ethereal fingers kept reaching for her, and each touch left her weaker. The beauty of this trap, hissed the Skex delegate, its acidic form spreading across the floor toward them, is that even if your fleet somehow survives, they'll be branded as aggressors. The galaxy will unite against humanity for destroying a peaceful diplomatic station. The station shuddered as another salvo from the human fleet found its mark. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they could see coalition reinforcements arriving, sleek ships that had been hidden in the system's asteroid field, their weapons charging for a devastating ambush. But the human fleet was ready. The CDF, Hammerfall, a heavy cruiser scarred from the Proxima siege, rolled to present its port broadside. 24 railgun batteries spoke in unison, hurling tungsten slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The first coalition frigate simply vanished, its hull atomized by the kinetic impact dot in the chamber. The battle had reached a desperate pitch. Voss's wire had claimed more Velthari, but the survivors were learning to avoid its singing embrace. The Corvin delegate, his breathing apparatus jury-rigged with emergency tubing, had rejoined the fight with the berserker fury of his species. Your fleet burns, human, Prexel shrieked, his mandibles clicking in excitement. Look, the main display showed the human ships taking heavy damage. The CDF Retribution's port engine was venting plasma, and the destroyer Razor's Edge was listing badly, its hull breached in 3 places. The coalition's trap was working. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but Voss just smiled, even as Velthari claws raked across his ribs. You still don't understand, he said, his voice carrying over the sounds of battle. We didn't come here to win a fair fight. On the display, something new appeared at the edge of the system. Not ships to large, to angular, space itself seemed to ripple and tear, and through the wounds in reality stepped the true nightmare of human engineering. Mobile battle stations, fortress-class constructs that humanity had built in the deepest black between stars, powered by miniature black holes and armed with weapons that violated 3 different interstellar treaties. The first one through was designated Hellbringer, its name written in human script across a hole the size of a small moon. Its primary weapon, a gravitational lance that could collapse matter at the quantum level, spun up with a sound like reality screaming. Impossible, the Whisperfolk delegate gasped, its ethereal form flickering with fear. The Council banned such weapons. The Council isn't at war with humanity, Voss replied, his wire taking the head off another Velthari. We are. The Hellbringer's first shot erased a coalition heavy cruiser from existence, leaving only a brief flash of X-rays where the ship had been. Its escorts opened fire with weapons that turned space itself into a killing field. Singularity, torpedoes, quantum disruptors, and the dreaded glass cannons that could sterilize a planet's surface in minutes. In the conference chamber, the coalition delegates were beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They had planned to execute a human diplomat and blamed the resulting war on human aggression. Instead, they had triggered something far worse. They had given humanity an excuse to unleash the monsters they kept hidden in the dark. This is Admiral Kowalski to all coalition forces. The human commander's voice echoed through the station. You have 30 seconds to surrender, or we demonstrate why the galaxy fears humanity when we stop pretending to be civilized. The Skex delegate was pulling around Voss and Lyra now, its acidic form closing in for the kill. The remaining Velthari prepared for a final assault, their claws gleaming with alien poison. But the countdown had begun, and everyone in the chamber could feel it, the moment when humanity would stop playing by the Galaxies, rules, and start, playing by their own, the moment when the sky would truly open with fire. The Coalition's answer came in the form of a massive fleet deck of over 300 ships, materializing from stealth fields throughout the system. The trap was even larger than the humans had anticipated, with vessels from 12 different species arranged in a killing formation around Nexus Station. Magnificent. Admiral Kowalski's voice crackled through the calm, but there was no fear. In its only anticipation, they brought friends. In the conference chamber, Prextel's mandibles clicked in triumph. Your fortress ships are impressive, human, but they are only 3 against our armada. Even your infamous brutality has limits. Voss ducked under another Velthari swipe, his monomolecular wire singing as it carved through crystalline armor. Round him, the Coalition delegates pressed their attack with renewed fury, sensing victory within their grasp. 3. Voss laughed, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Admiral, would you mind updating our friends on the actual numbers? The space around the system began to ripple again. Not 3 mobile battle stations, 30, each one emerging from quantum fold drives that bent space-time like origami, their hulls bearing the scars of battles fought in the galaxy's darkest corners. The CDF had learned painful lessons from humanity's expansion into the stars. They had learned that the galaxy was not kind to species that played fair. They had learned that sometimes the only way to ensure humanity's survival was to become the thing that made alien children wake up screaming. The fortress ship World Ender powered up its primary array of weapon that could crack a planet's crust with a single shot. The Void Reaper began charging its antimatter spreaders. The Nightmare's black hole torpedoes armed themselves with the patient hunger of collapsed stars, but it was the arrival of the smallest ship that truly changed the balance of power. The CDF Croatum, a single-seat fighter whose pilot had been declared dead 7 years ago. Ghost drifted through the Coalition formation. Where it passed, enemy ships simply stopped working. Their weapons powered down, their shields collapsed, their life support began to fail. What is that thing? The Whisperfolk delegate gasped, its ethereal form flickering with panic. That, Voss said, finally managing to wrap his wire around the Skex delegate's core mass. It's Commander Yuki Tanaka. The Coalition killed her entire family at the Battle of New Kyoto. She's been perfecting her revenge ever since. The Croatum was more than a ship, it was a flying virus, a mechanical plague that turned enemy technology against itself. Commander Tanaka had spent 7 years in the depths of space, her body more machine than human now. Her mind focused on a single purpose, making the Coalition pay for every human life they'd taken. Coalition ships began exploding from within. As their own systems turned against them, navigation computers plotted courses into nearby stars. Weapon systems fired on their own fleets. Life support systems began converting oxygen into poison. In the conference chamber, the tide of battle shifted with brutal suddenness. The Skex delegate's form began to dissolve as Voss's wire disrupted its cellular cohesion. The creature's dying screams echoed through the chamber. As its acidic body ate through the floor plating, Lyra, her neural disruptor finally depleted, drew a plasma knife from her boot and drove it into the Whisperfolk delegate's core matrix. The ethereal being's form exploded into fragments of light, its death scream echoing across multiple dimensions. This is impossible, Prextel shrieked, his forearms gesturing wildly. Humans are supposed to be reasonable, civilized. You follow rules. We did, Voss said, his wire taking the last Veltharia's head in a spray of crystalline fragments, until you decided to murder diplomats. The main display showed the true scope of the human response. The Coalition's 300-ship armada was being systematically destroyed by a force that had materialized from nothing. Fortress ships that should have taken decades to build. Weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics. Technology that seemed to operate on principles no sane species would explore. The Coalition had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that the humans they saw, the diplomats, the merchants, the colonists, represented the full extent of human capability. They had never considered that humanity might be hiding their true nature behind a mask of civilization. The Corvin delegate made one last desperate charge, his massive bulk shaking the chamber. But Voss was done playing defense. He triggered the emergency locks on his trauma plates, the armor exploding outward in a shower of metal fragments. Beneath lay not the body of a diplomat, but the scarred form of a soldier. The monomolecular wire became a whirlwind of death, wrapping around the Corvin's throat and tightening with hydraulic force. The giant's death roar echoed through the chamber as his neck snapped like a branch. "You want to know the truth about humans?" Voss asked, turning to face the surviving coalition delegates. "We're not the reasonable ones. We're not the civilized ones. We're the species that crawled out of a gravity well by strapping ourselves to controlled explosion. We're the ones who looked at the infinite darkness between stars and decided to make it our home." Outside, the coalition fleet was in full retreat, their surviving ships fleeing toward the system's edge, but the human fortress ships were faster, their quantum drives allowing them to appear anywhere in the system at will. "We tried to be what you wanted," Voss continued, his voice carrying the weight of humanity's hidden fury. "We tried to follow your laws, respect your boundaries, play by your rules. But you just declared war on every human in the galaxy." Prextel was backing toward the chamber's exit, his mandibles clicking in terror. "Please," he chittered, "we can negotiate." "Negotiate?" Voss smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression the alien had ever seen. "You just killed that option when you decided to murder a diplomat." The chamber door exploded inward as human marines in power armor stormed through. They moved with the fluid precision of apex predators, their weapons tracking with mechanical accuracy. The few surviving coalition delegates didn't even have time to surrender. The space around Nexus Station became a graveyard of metal and fire as the coalition's retreat turned into a rout. Admiral Kowalski stood on the bridge of the CDF Retribution, her scarred face illuminated by the glow of enemy ships dying in the void. "Status report," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. 37 coalition vessels destroyed, sir, reported her tactical officer. "They're trying to form a defensive line around the gas giant, but their coordination is breaking down." Through the ship's massive viewport, Kowalski could see the carnage. The coalition had brought their finest ships, their most experienced crews, their deadliest weapons. It hadn't been enough. The fortress ship Hellbringer had positioned itself at the system's edge, its gravitational lances reaching out to crush fleeing vessels like insects. Where the exotic weapons touched coalition hulls, matter simply ceased to exist, leaving perfect spheres of vacuum that the surrounding space rushed to fill. But the coalition wasn't going quietly. The Velthari flagship Crystalline Wrath had turned to face the human fleet, its hull crackling with energy as it prepared to fire its primary weapon, a resonance cannon that could shatter molecular bonds across an entire star system. Around it, the surviving coalition ships formed a desperate defensive formation. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Kowalski ordered as the alien weapon charged. "Show them why humans learn to dance with death." The resonance cannon fired, its beam reaching across space to strike the human fleet. Where it touched, armor plating began to vibrate at frequencies that tore matter apart. The destroyer CDF Valkyria took a direct hit, its hull screaming as the weapon tried to shake it into component atoms. But human engineering had been forged in the crucible of impossible wars. The Valkyrie's emergency stabilizers kicked in, dampening the resonance frequencies. Its captain, a grizzled veteran named Torres, responded with a full spread of quantum torpedoes. The crystalline wrath shields flared as the torpedoes detonated, each one creating a brief pocket of twisted space-time. The massive alien vessel shuddered, its crystalline hull developing fracture lines that spread like spider webs. "Target their command structure," Torres ordered, his ship rolling to avoid return fire. "Make them feel what it's like to lose their leaders." The battle spread across the system as more coalition reinforcements arrived through quantum gates. The Corvin had brought their planet killers, massive ships designed to crack worlds open like eggs. The Whisper folk emerged from parallel dimensions, their ghostly vessels phasing in and out of reality. Against them came humanity's true war fleet, not the diplomatic ships the galaxy knew, but the nightmare vessels they had built in the dark between stars, ships whose very existence violated interstellar law, crewed by people who had died in the official records but lived on in the shadow of humanity's rage. The CDF Reaper materialized inside the coalition formation, its hull phasing through solid matter until it reached the center of the enemy fleet. Then it dropped out of phase and unleashed hell. Antimatter spreaders turned coalition fighters into brief stars. Gravitational mines collapsed local space-time, creating killing fields that no ship could traverse. The Reaper's captain, a woman who had supposedly died at the siege of Vega Prime, laughed as she turned the laws of physics into weapons. But the coalition was learning to adapt. The Skeks had brought their bioships, living vessels that could regenerate damage and evolve new defenses in real time. One of them wrapped itself around the human cruiser CDF Thunderbolt, its acidic secretions eating through the hull, while neural tentacles attempted to take control of the ship's systems. Captain Morrison, commanding the Thunderbolt, made a decision that would have horrified civilian observers. He armed his ship's self-destruct not to destroy his own vessel, but to overload the bioship's feeding process. The explosion consumed both ships, but the feedback killed 17 other Skex vessels as their neural network collapsed. Morrison's sacrifice had eliminated an entire wing of the Coalition fleet. All ships, take note. Admiral Kowalski's voice echoed across the human fleet. That's how we say goodbye to alien scum. The battle reached its crescendo as the Fortress ships closed with the Coalition's main fleet. The World Ender's planet cracker weapons found their mark, and the Corvin flagship simply ceased to exist. Its matter converted to energy in a flash that could be seen from neighboring star systems. But the Coalition's desperation made them dangerous. The Whisper folk began a kamikaze run, their phase-shifting ships attempting to materialize inside human vessels. Several succeeded, their ghostly hulls merging with human ships in explosions of twisted metal and screaming energy. The CDF Indomitable took 3 phase rams before its hull finally gave way. As the ship broke apart, its crew activated the emergency beacon that would ensure their names were remembered. 200 humans died in those seconds, but their sacrifice allowed the Indomitable's sister ship to target the Whisper folk fleet. With specialized phase disruptor weapons, the alien ships began materializing at random as their phase drives failed, appearing inside asteroids, inside each other, inside the system's sun. The Whisper folk's mastery of dimensional warfare became their doom, as they lost control of their own technology. Sir, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with concentration. We're detecting quantum gates opening throughout the system. The Coalition is calling in everything they have. Through the gates came the horror of the Coalition's reserve fleets. Ships from species humanity had never encountered, wielding weapons that defied understanding, biomechanical hybrids that seemed to be part vessel, part living creature, energy beings that existed as pure information, taking control of human systems through digital infiltration. But humanity had one more surprise. From the depths of space came the CDF Thanatos, a ship that officially didn't exist, crewed by volunteers who had undergone modifications that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be human. Its captain, a man whose name had been erased from every record, spoke with a voice that carried the weight of humanity's darkest hour. This is the Thanatos. We are the line in the sand. We are the price of trying to destroy our species. The ship's weapons defied classification. They didn't just destroy enemy vessels. They erased them from the quantum foam of reality itself, making it so they had never existed in the first place. Coalition reinforcements arrived to find their allies simply gone, with only the fading echoes of their radio transmissions to prove they had ever been there. The tide of battle had turned, but the cost was becoming clear. Human ships burned alongside alien ones, their crews dying in the dark cold of space. This wasn't a clean victory, it was a grinding war of attrition, where every gain was paid for in blood. Admiral Kowalski looked out at the carnage and felt the weight of command. She had unleashed humanity's fury, but at what cost? How many would die before the galaxy learned to fear the species that had crawled out of Earth's gravity well? The answer would be written in fire across the stars. The Coalition's final gambit came not from their fleets, but from Nexus Station itself, deep within the crystalline structure. Ancient weapons that predated the Galactic Council began to wake. The station hadn't just been a diplomatic center, it was a dormant war machine, built by a civilization that had ruled the galaxy before the current species had learned to use fire. Sir, massive energy buildup from the station, reported the Retribution Sensor Officer, her voice tight with alarm. Whatever they're powering up, it's drawing energy from the system's star itself. Admiral Kowalski felt ice in her veins as she watched the readings. The station was pulling solar plasma through dimensional conduits, feeding it into weapons systems that could sterilize entire sectors. The Coalition had lured humanity into range of a galaxy killer. All ships, maximum burn away from the station, she ordered. Emergency jump preparation, delayed, came the voice of Prextel, somehow broadcasting from the station's core. The Ancient Ones built this weapon to prevent any single species from dominating the galaxy. Humanity's expansion ends here. The station's surface began to glow as stellar energy coursed through its crystalline matrix. Weapons ports that had been hidden for millennia opened like blooming flowers. each one capable of annihilating a planet. The Coalition had traded their fleets for this moment the chance to erase humanity from existence. But they had made one crucial error. They had assumed that Ambassador Voss and his aide were the only humans aboard the station. Deep in the station's maintenance tunnels, a figure moved with predatory grace. Commander Elena Vasquez had been officially dead for 3 years, killed in a classified operation that had never happened. In reality, she had been preparing for this moment, the day when humanity would need someone inside the galaxy's most secure facility. Her body was more machine than flesh now. Cybernetic implants allowing her to interface directly with alien technology. She had spent months learning the station's systems, mapping its weaknesses, preparing for the day when humanity would need a killer in the shadows. "This is Wraith," she whispered into her comm, using the call sign she had carried in a dozen Black operations. "I'm in position at the station's core. Give me 30 seconds." Above, the station's weapons reached critical charge. The first shot would target Earth itself, traveling through folded space to arrive before any warning could be transmitted. The second would hit the human colonies. The third would sterilize the Colonial Defense Fleet's primary bases. Humanity's expansion would end in a single devastating moment. But Commander Vasquez had reached the station's control center, her cybernetic implants burning through alien security protocols like acid through paper. The station's AI, ancient and vast, tried to stop her, but she had come prepared for electronic warfare. "I am the ghost in your machine," she whispered to the alien intelligence. "I am the virus in your code. I am humanity's answer to extinction." Her implants released a cascade of logic bombs into the station systems, not random destruction, but surgical strikes at the weapon's control mechanisms. The stellar energy still flowed, but now it had nowhere to go except weapons discharge. "Redirected," Vasquez reported, her voice steady despite the radiation burning through her body. "Energy flow reversed. The station is now feeding power back into the star." The system's star began to destabilize as terawatts of energy were pumped back into its core. Solar flares erupted across its surface, and its luminosity began to increase. Exponentially, the Coalition's ultimate weapon had become a stellar detonator. "All ships, emergency jump now." Admiral Kowalski's voice echoed across the fleet frequencies. "The star's going nova." The human fleet vanished into quantum fold space just as the star began its death throes. Behind them, Nexus Station and the remaining Coalition forces were consumed in the birth of a new nebula, their atoms scattered across a light year of space. But the victory came at a cost that would haunt humanity for generations. "Sir," the communications officer reported, his voice breaking, "we're receiving a final transmission from Commander Vasquez." The bridge fell silent as Elena's voice filled the air, distorted by radiation, but still recognizably human. "Tell them," she said, her words carrying across the void. "Tell them that humanity doesn't forgive. Tell them that we don't forget. Tell them that we are the monsters they made us." The transmission cut to static as the Nova's radiation front consumed the station's remains. Admiral Kowalski stood in the silence, feeling the weight of command and the price of victory. They had won, but at what cost? Commander Vasquez, Ambassador Voss, his aide Lyra, Captain Morrison, and 200 other souls had paid the ultimate price for humanity's survival. But their sacrifice had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity could be diplomatic, reasonable, civilized, but when forced to choose between extinction and unleashing the darkness they carried within, they would choose to become the nightmare that made alien species tell stories. To frighten their children, the galaxy had tried to end humanity's expansion by murdering their diplomat. Instead, they had learned why humans were the species that other species feared in the dark. The Nova's light would travel for years, carrying with it the news of humanity's response to betrayal. Every species that saw it would know, this is what happens when you kill a human diplomat. This is what happens when you underestimate the children of Earth. 6 months after the Nexus incident, the galaxy had learned to fear the sound of human engines. The Coalition's surviving leadership met in a shielded bunker on the rim world of Kethmori, their faces bearing the haunted expressions of beings who had poked the tiger and discovered it was actually a dragon. The war they had started to contain humanity had instead unleashed something far worse, a species that had revealed its true nature to the stars. "The humans have taken 4 to 7 systems in the past month alone," reported General Kexathan, his chitinous form trembling with suppressed fear. They're not even bothering with occupation forces. They arrive, eliminate all military assets, and leave warning beacons that translate the same message in every known language. This system is under human protection. Interference will result in extinction. The assembled coalition leaders what remained of them exchanged glances filled with the bitter understanding of total defeat. The Velthari Imperium had lost 60% of its fleet. The Corvan hegemony's homeworld was under blockade by human fortress ships. The Whisper folk had retreated to dimensions so far removed from baseline reality that their very existence had become theoretical. They're not even demanding surrender, whispered High Counselor Velash, her crystalline voice fractured with despair. They're simply expanding, taking what they want, ignoring our attempts at communication. Through the bunker's reinforced viewport, they could see the night sky of Kethmori, where once the stars had shone steady and familiar. Now they flickered with the telltale signatures of human quantum drives. The children of Earth were everywhere, and they were no longer pretending to be civilized. On Earth itself, the Terran Assembly convened an emergency session. President Maria Santos stood before the gathered representatives of humanity's colonies, her face bearing the weight of the galaxy's newest superpower. The galaxy wanted to see what humans were capable of when pushed to the brink, she said, her voice carrying to every human settlement from Sol to the Outer Rim. Now they know. The question before us is simple. What do we do with this power? In the months following the Nexus incident, humanity had shed the diplomatic mask they had worn for decades. The colonial defense fleet emerged from the shadows, revealing technologies that made the galaxy's most advanced weapons look like stone axes. Ships that could fold space like origami, weapons that rewrote the laws of physics, soldiers who had transcended the boundaries of baseline humanity. The transformation had been swift and terrifying. Human diplomats who had once begged for peaceful coexistence now delivered ultimatums with the confidence of apex predators. Human merchants who had traded fairly now controlled shipping lanes with the authority of conquerors. Human colonists who had sought only new homes now carved out empires with the efficiency of natural disasters. But in a quiet cemetery on Luna, where Earth's moon watched over the cradle of humanity, Admiral Helena Kowalski stood before a wall of names, heroes who had died at Nexus Station, their sacrifice enabling humanity's transformation from supplicant to sovereign. Commander Elena Vasquez, she read aloud, her fingers tracing the engraved letters. Ambassador Casimir Voss, Lieutenant Lyra Castellanos, Captain James Morrison. The list went on, each name representing a human who had paid the ultimate price for their species' survival. Sir, came a voice behind her. Kowalski turned to see Captain Reynolds, her new aide, approaching with a data pad, the latest intelligence, reports from the outer systems. She accepted the pad, scanning the information with practiced efficiency. The galaxy was adapting to its new reality with the desperate creativity of prey animals. New alliances formed and collapsed daily. Species that had never spoken to each other now shared intelligence about human movement patterns. Ancient weapons were being pulled from forgotten vaults, powered by the hope that somewhere in the galaxy's arsenals lay something that could stop humanity's expansion. They're calling us the Terran Empire now, Reynolds observed, his voice carefully neutral. Are we? Kowalski asked, genuinely curious about her aide's perspective. I don't know, sir. We're not conquering for conquest's sake. We're not enslaving populations or strip mining worlds. We're just there, everywhere, making it clear that we're not going anywhere, and that anyone who tries to push us will meet the same fate as the Coalition. Kowalski nodded thoughtfully. In the months since Nexus, humanity had indeed behaved more like protective parents than conquering tyrants. They had broken the galaxy's military power, but they had also ended 3 separate genocidal conflicts, established trade routes that brought prosperity to previously isolated worlds, and created a zone of stability that spanned a quarter of the galaxy. The galaxy feared them, but it was beginning to need them as well. A chime from her personal communicator interrupted her thoughts. The message was brief, but its implications were staggering. First contact with the hegemony of suns. They want to negotiate. The hegemony, the galaxy's oldest surviving civilization. Rulers of the galactic core. Keepers of technologies that predated every other species by millions of years. They had watched the Coalition's destruction with ancient eyes, and now they wanted to speak with humanity's representatives, not as supplicants seeking mercy, but as equals acknowledging a new power in the galaxy. Kowalski smiled, feeling the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. The galaxy had tried to end humanity's expansion by killing their diplomat. Instead, they had created something unprecedented, a species that combined diplomatic sophistication with military supremacy, the wisdom to seek peace with the strength to enforce it. Reynolds, she said, pocketing the communicator, prepare. The retribution for departure. We have a meeting with some very old aliens who suddenly want to be our friends. As she walked away from the memorial wall, Admiral Kowalski reflected on the path that had brought humanity to this point. They had started as explorers, become refugees, been forced into the role of warriors, and emerged as the galaxy's reluctant guardians. The stars above Luna shone with the light of human civilization, not conquered territories, but protected. Spaces where sapient beings could live without fear of extinction. The children of Earth had learned the hardest lesson the galaxy could teach. Sometimes, the only way to preserve peace was to become strong enough that no one dared disturb it. In the depths of space, the nova that had been Nexus Station continued to expand. It's like carrying the story of humanity's transformation to distant worlds. Every species that saw it understood the message written in stellar fire. They had killed the human diplomat, and in return, humanity had shown them what it meant to awaken a sleeping giant. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps, in time, it would be better. After all, humans had always been very good at fixing things that were broken, even if they had to break them first. I don't know, sir. We're not conquering for conquest's sake. We're not enslaving populations or strip mining worlds. We're just there, everywhere, making it clear that we're not going anywhere, and that anyone who tries to push us will meet the same fate as the Coalition. Kowalski nodded thoughtfully. In the months since Nexus, humanity had indeed behaved more like protective parents than conquering tyrants. They had broken the galaxy's military power, but they had also ended 3 separate genocidal conflicts, established trade routes that brought prosperity to previously isolated worlds, and created a zone of stability that spanned a quarter of the galaxy. The galaxy feared them, but it was beginning to need them as well. A chime from her personal communicator interrupted her thoughts. The message was brief, but its implications were staggering. First contact with the hegemony of suns. They want to negotiate. The hegemony, the galaxy's oldest surviving civilization. Rulers of the galactic core. Keepers of technologies that predated every other species by millions of years. They had watched the Coalition's destruction with ancient eyes, and now they wanted to speak with humanity's representatives, not as supplicants seeking mercy, but as equals acknowledging a new power in the galaxy. Kowalski smiled, feeling the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. The galaxy had tried to end humanity's expansion by killing their diplomat. Instead, they had created something unprecedented, a species that combined diplomatic sophistication with military supremacy, the wisdom to seek peace with the strength to enforce it. Reynolds, she said, pocketing the communicator, prepare. The retribution for departure. We have a meeting with some very old aliens who suddenly want to be our friends. As she walked away from the memorial wall, Admiral Kowalski reflected on the path that had brought humanity to this point. They had started as explorers, become refugees, been forced into the role of warriors, and emerged as the galaxy's reluctant guardians. The stars above Luna shone with the light of human civilization, not conquered territories, but protected. Spaces where sapient beings could live without fear of extinction. The children of Earth had learned the hardest lesson the galaxy could teach. Sometimes, the only way to preserve peace was to become strong enough that no one dared disturb it. In the depths of space, the nova that had been Nexus Station continued to expand. It's like carrying the story of humanity's transformation to distant worlds. Every species that saw it understood the message written in stellar fire. They had killed the human diplomat, and in return, humanity had shown them what it meant to awaken a sleeping giant. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps, in time, it would be better. After all, humans had always been very good at fixing things that were broken, even if they had to break them first.